If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
The blah blah blah.
Sending out good vibes.
The blah blah blah.
Good vibes.
Blah
Good vibes.
the blah blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
America.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Graham Eric Show. We are going to be chatting with Eli Coberly a little bit later. What we chat about again?
The War in the Hearts of Men. He's got a book out.
I've seen the art and I've seen that title, but I feel like for the first time in a long time, we've built up a can again. And we're,
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
it's a good feeling to have
Some extra apps. Yeah.
I feel like it is so far behind the times, especially with both shows.
Yeah. In his new book, he details his lifelong quest to understand the Maya culture and its impact on the present. He shares the discovery of the artistry of stone-carved symbols on the heels of his extensive travels to both Central and South America. In this intimate and inspirational text, he contrasts the contemporary life with the past as he explores spiritual rituals that form the framework of the ancient Maya culture. Yeah, pretty fascinating. I think it's way more prevalent to the ancient aspect and how big that was. Like that other book, I talk about the book a little bit in this show that we published in audio there. It's called The Prehistoric World or The Vanished Races, and they go quite in depth back in the late 1800s on the Maya.
Of course, that's available over
cultures.
on Audible.
Yeah.
You want to check that out. Also, if you want to skip our lazy ramblings, jump right in the chat with Eli. There's a timestamp in the show notes.
This is probably going to be a long intro.
Yeah, probably be a little long, extended, I would say. Why? What do you got?
Well, I mean, we got to talk about all kinds of stuff. We got to talk about your stuff. There's lots going on. I mean, I feel like we just need to sort of vent a little bit too. So hopefully people stick around for our lazy ramblings, but if not, I mean, we got a couple extra eps coming out too. I think we're going to put an extra one of these eps out. We're trying to have a sort of a surprise ep with a great interview, somebody that you'll all love. And we got an extra outlawed ep coming out. And I guess there's some more news. I mean, if you want to watch some videos of our outlawed apps, you can go. This is our other podcast, Completely Grimerica Outlawed. Get the full audio from the website and on all the podcast players. But you can also see the videos on Rumble and Locals and Substack. So there's some ways to get our content in a different sort of platform, different variety.
Yeah, maybe it's a good way to like gift us to someone. Maybe you could sign up for that kind of stuff. But we'll talk about that more on that show. Of course, if you guys, some people still can't seem to figure out that it is a completely different podcast that we do with different sort of subject matter, mostly a little more controversial. So if you want to check that out, that's GrimericaOutlawed.ca. Search Grimerica Outlawed in your podcast player. Anyways, I assume that what you want to talk about is the liberal government's plans for the little convention.
Well, no, not really. I mean, no, I was thinking more of like the coronation aspect. I wanted to kind of talk about the coronation.
Oh.
But I mean, and the problem is we're doing the intro on Monday, the May 8th. So, everybody's had a few days to digest the weirdness going on in the world in the last kind of weekend. But yeah,
nothing about it. Kevin called me and filled me in on some things on the 666 thing and on the this and the that. But other than that, I am completely oblivious on any of this coronation stuff.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, okay, let's just jump into this a little bit then. I'm going to link to two Substacks that are amazing. One is from Matt Errett, who we have a video out. He was on our Outlawed. The audio will be coming out soon. And also Naomi Wolf. They both have a very, very different Substack on the coronation. But first of all, before we get into that, even, I mean, so Kevin called Darren and said, so I mean, this is why it's so crazy, right? And I haven't gone through the calendar myself and checked this, but I've heard it from enough sort of reliable sources, from what I consider reliable, that it's probably true. But
he says he's the Antichrist.
Oh, that's interesting.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. He's the Antichrist. Well, geez, that's very interesting. I mean, so 6 months, 6 weeks, 6 days after the Queen was announced dead, or that she died, the day she died, he was coronated. So is that a coincidence? I mean, it's also the day after the WHO says there's no more emergency for the coronavirus. So the corona ends with the WHO and the coronation starts the next day. I mean, come on. Another coincidence?
Could be. But they still want vaccines. The liberals still say they're going to mandate vaccine.
Well, that's kind of how this all connects, right? Then today, going around everywhere is the Canadian Liberal platform. And again, this is not like it's old. So my friend says, "Oh, I just found out this is old," and I'm pissed off at my friend who sent me this because it's like he's sending him old stuff, right? And then I started getting it myself. I looked into it. I followed the link to the Liberal website. I'm like, oh my God, it's right there. It's like, how can we finish off the COVID? I should go to it actually, instead of just railing about it here. It's on our Instagram too. So it says, to finish the fight. I mean, this is like just it's so mind blowing. I'm actually really enjoying it, because I think they should really approve this, get it in their platform, and we'll see what happens. But to finish the fight against COVID, protect people at work, ensure businesses can get back up to speed, and most importantly, make sure our kids can safely return to school, we need to do everything we can to keep the public spaces safe. So a re-elected Liberal government will require that travelers on interprovincial trains, flights, cruise ships, other federally regulated vessels be vaccinated. Ensure vaccination across the federal public service. And then we'll keep working with employers and crown corporations. Regulated workplace vaccination is prioritized for workers. Free boosters. And so of course that is their old platform, but it's they just had a meeting apparently, and I heard a voice recording of one of the MPs or one of their offices say that they're trying to approve this. They're trying to get this actually to stay in their platform. So maybe it'll come out, maybe it won't, but the fact that they left it there on purpose, it's pretty alarming. Do you think their base even, I mean, who even would agree to this right now at this point?
I don't know. I'd be curious on what the polls were. I wish there would be, I don't know.
Reliable polls?
Yeah, you can't really trust the polls. And I'm not really thinking the government will help me anyway, but I would like to just see Trudeau the fuck out of here. I've just had enough of his mug and his little agenda, and the other guys, at least maybe it'll be a slower agenda or different. I'm ready for a different flavor of the agenda at a minimum.
Yeah. I just hope this goes through. I hope they stick it, because we'll see how this will shine a bright light on how ridiculous they are. Because a lot of their base will just say, oh, this is out of control now. I mean, sure, there'll be like 20-30% that are just hardcore going along with it. But
Kevin sent me some other shit too. And there's like a story that goes along with it. Okay. So apparently he's got a buddy who works with all this 5G stuff, right? With the 5G towers, all that kind of stuff on a pretty high level.
Okay.
So I've sort of heard this thing before, what was it? But Kevin says this is buddy, so I don't know.
Okay, can we talk about which Kevin you're talking about, or does it matter?
I don't think he wants me to say which Kevin.
Okay.
At this point.
Okay.
But the one that was just with us.
Okay.
And he's like, freaking out, which is funny because there's a time when he was freaking out about the shots he already had. So now he calls me up today. First he tries to call me last night. He's like, it's important. We got to talk. So talk to him today. And he sent me this link, and then he's got the story that goes along with the link. And this thing does go. I mean, I'm looking at it at patents.google.com. That's the page I'm on my cell phone. Patents.google. So the link he sent me to patents.google.com. US patent number 6754472B1. Okay.
Yep.
And anyway, he's saying that his buddy was in there, took a picture of some shit inside there where he's seen patent numbers inside these 5G towers, took him back and ran him up on the internet. And that's where this link has come from. I don't know. I'm not saying I did that, but this is what my buddy's telling me. Okay. So you want to know what the patent's for?
Yeah, of course.
Method and apparatus for transmitting power and data using the human body.
Nice.
Abstract. Methods and apparatus for distributing power and data to devices coupled to the human body are described. The human body is used as a conductive medium, e.g., a bus, over which power and data is distributed. Power is distributed by coupling a power source to the human body via a first set of electrodes, or one or more devices to be powered, e.g., peripheral devices. So, anyway, claims a network of devices compromising a first device for generating a first electrical signal. A body of a living creature for coupling the first device to the second device, and for conducting the electrical signal from the first device to the second device, and the initialization of information from the second device to the first device, wherein the first and second devices establish a master and slave relationship there between.
I can't believe they use that in there.
I know.
So
right?
they're allowed to use master
I
and
don't
slave
even
in their
know what I'm
patents.
saying
And
here.
we can't even call the bedroom a master bedroom. And what?
I'm just reading the shit of the patent. I can't really understand it. But it seems
sounds like they're transmitting stuff back and forth.
Shit. And some 5G. If it came out of a 5G tower, though, then they're using the 5G to like do what?
To interact with the graphene oxide that's swimming around in your veins.
Well, that's the thought, right? That has something to do with that. The jibbity jibbities, the jibbity jabs.
Yeah. This will get us in trouble.
What? Anyway, that's what Kevin sent me. So
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't really
that's
have an
fascinating.
opinion on it yet. It's just a weird place to get it from because he's not a conspiracy guy. He's kind of like mostly a leftist, and except on a few things, you know.
Yeah, he's more conspiratorial than the average bear. I mean, come on. He's
The average bear.
yeah. I mean, we've had all kinds of crazy
The old
conversations
boy
about stuff.
podcast.
He's halfway there with a lot of stuff. So I'll get into this Matthew Arid post then. I mean, this is really fascinating. This is Global Britain and King Charles Great Reset. And he gets into like, you know, of course, the City of London, the casual hand of British intelligence, the Crown agents, the Queen is dead, long live the King. I mean, this has been 70 years, since the last time they did this. He's the world's largest property owner. 6.6 billion acres. Prerogative powers are real. King Charles and the Great Reset. Eco warrior of a new crusade. The Nazi roots of House of Saxe, Coburg, Gotha. Oh, that's the other part. Apparently, he's descended from Vlad the Impaler, who was like one of the original Dracul. I mean, beyond the film, more Nazi roots of the Windsors. I mean, the crown is the key to the continuity of empire. So, I mean, this is a fascinating one. And now
Continuity.
Naomi Wolf has a completely different one. It's more about the esoteric symbolism and the occult sort of nature about this. She talks about
Who's that again?
Naomi Wolf.
Yeah.
She's the one that did the book on the 32. She had like 3,200 people investigating the Pfizer documents and all that. She wrote the book about that.
Huh.
her thing is outspoken with Dr. Naomi Wolf. She's really come around to be one of the biggest warriors in all this. So it's quite a long one too, and it gets in all the crazy symbolism of the pageantry of this and how there's a bunch of aberrant things going on with this. And then she talks about the dresses of the ladies and how, like, back in the day, she shows all these pictures of all the old coronations and how they wore like the clothes of the day, the ladies. And now these ladies are dressed like a druidic circle. I mean, they're wearing these gowns, and she shows comparisons with the druid circles and stuff. So, you know, it really does feel like a departure from the tradition. And then she shows the pictures, like there's the big one, the one tree, almost like the tree of life on the screen. Did you know there was a screen, like a privacy screen, when he said his things back there, so nobody could hear what he was saying? So it was all covered up with the screen.
No, I don't even know what you're talking about.
And they misquoted a bunch of stuff that was supposedly from Jesus, and they misquote. I mean, it's either full of unintentional, like errors, or it's just messed up on purpose. Very, very strange.
We're talking about the King's speech.
Well, no, no, the quotes that they were maybe his quotes during the thing, like his I mean, I haven't watched the whole thing. I can't stomach all this stuff.
No, me neither. I was just like,
but it's these weird sort of coincidences that make it so. It's about quotes from Julian of Norwich describing her version of Jesus, but they mess up the quote. So it's part of the Royal UK website that's messing up the quote. So this is one of the weird things. But there's all this Druidic symbolism in there with the white robes and crowns of leaves, and with the echo of the Hebrew tabernacle. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes if people want to go through it. It's really worth the read.
Interesting. I like it.
But I'm here for the regular segment that we seem to be having about Darren and his guns. We needed like a rat-a-tat-tat jingle or something like that.
What? I wonder if Felix still listens.
I don't know.
I haven't heard from him in a long time. I could just like, you know what?
Just do a pew pew. It could just be
no,
pew pew.
No, here, I'll be right back. You say something. Keep talking.
Okay, I'll keep talking. Yeah. So I'll just keep talking. I'll read some more of like Naomi Wolf's stuff there. Oh, Darren's back already.
All right, you ready?
Yeah. There you go.
How's that?
That's pretty rat-a-tat-tat.
That's my BB gun, but it doesn't have any BBs in it. So
I wanted to talk to you about that.
CO2.
I think that's my solution.
What solution to what? To the birds?
Get a BB gun.
For the birds?
What? For protection.
What?
Yeah, it'll hurt people enough to. Wouldn't it?
Dude, no.
You have to be.
I mean,
do I need a permit for that?
Like this
do I need a permit for that? I mean, even just having it looks scary, right?
You can get up to 500 feet per second without a permit.
Yeah, then why don't I just do that?
This one, they say, is 590 feet per second.
But I mean, that looks like a real gun, dude. I mean, if you started rat-a-tat-tatting that at somebody, they're not going to stick around to see whether it's a real one or not.
In it, and
what?
If you had a fresh cartridge and some pellets in it, it would fucking hurt if you got shot in the face with it.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Any place in the body you can absorb pretty easy. I mean, you can probably absorb a half dozen 22 shots.
I could, yeah, especially right now.
You could absorb a dozen, depending on where they hit you. Anyway, so you want to hear?
I want to hear the story.
Okay. Well, I don't want to get.
Yeah, we're going to do the full Monty right now. We got lots of time. Yeah.
Well, I'm kind of looking at seriously looking at a lawsuit, so I don't know how much I want to say.
Well,
I definitely well, here, let's say this. All right, fuck it. So you
can just tell the story, right?
Right. I was out shooting, And I have maybe some magazines that the pins fell out of. We'll say that. So they're not like, they're supposed to be pinned at 5. So, because in Canada, you still buy the 30 round mags, like the exact same mags you get in the States, but they put a pin in. So you can't put any more than 5 bullets. Because that was a rule in 1995 when the Firearms Act came in.
Oh, that's what an extended mag is.
It's not even an extended mag. I misspoke when I said extended. It's just a standard mag because ours are pinned mags.
Well, okay, yeah. Okay.
But yeah, from a Canadian perspective, I guess it'd be extended, but they're prohibited in Canada anyway. So, and then I may or may not have been shooting one of my handguns in the bush, which is also.
So you didn't just have it on you. You might have been doing other things with it.
I know when he came around the corner, we were shooting. Targets.
I have a hard time imagining somebody
like shooting. One of the girls was shooting, so it was like, a very chill setting. But buddy was like ramped right up. Started yelling right away. We're on the ground. Not us, but all the weapons, and put us away and took it. And then of course he starts looking at the magazines and takes those, and he's
so
like,
did he take all your guns right away?
No, just the pistol and the mag.
Okay.
Mag.
Okay.
And then I was like, he was like talking about the cops are coming out there and blah blah blah. So, I mean, I thought for sure I was going to court at a minimum.
Maybe jail?
Nah, not jail. Nah, it would be a summons to appear because I don't have a criminal record or anything like that. I'm a law-abiding citizen. So, like, I have a background check run on me every morning with my restricted firearms license. So they know I'm fairly upstanding citizen. So they just give me a court date and probably take the pistol. And I don't know. That's what I wasn't sure was if they were going to take all my guns or not. But when we went back the second time to go grab some of the other people's IDs, I was like, well, just so you know, like my stance is that these fucking laws don't apply to me, period. Full stop. Because I'm an Indian. Just doesn't matter. It's doesn't affect me. And I have a lawyer and I'll pay, and, I'm willing to basically insinuate that I'm not going to roll over and I'm going to challenge whatever happens here in court to the full extent. And then after that, he went and radioed. He was on the radio for a while. And
he's like, I got this rogue Indian guy here.
Yeah, well, he was radioing the RCMP detachment.
What was he RCMP?
No, he was Fish and Wildlife.
Oh, okay. I should have known that. I can't picture how this happens, honestly. So
then when he comes back, he's like, under the direction of the chief RCMP officer, Cochran, I think, I'm going to give you a couple options. We can either charge this broad that was holding the gun when I came here with this and that, but then they'll probably seize the firearm, and we don't want that. We don't want this paper trail, And then he's like, or, he gave this other, I can't remember what option 2 was. But it was a little less. I think option 2 was, I can't remember what option 2 was. But then option 3 was, he's like, or I could just fine you for driving your truck off the road here, just so that there's like a paper record of this incident, and and he's like, you're driving off the road, it's only a $300 fine. It's a provincial thing. It's like, no big deal. You just pay the fine. No big deal. You guys go split it. And then he's like, oh, you know what? As I'm saying that out loud, I realize that I can't do that because you're an Indian, and not an Indian. He said indigenous. And under the treaty, blah, 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 you're allowed to drive your truck wherever you want when it's on public land, when it comes to the bush. You know, like even if there's a sign that says you can't go here, if it's a crown land, crown road, I can fucking go there hunting. So he's like, so I can't do that. So he's like, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll charge this white girl.
Is that
No, it's not Shauna. I recommended maybe just charging Shauna, that I'd pay her ticket, but it's my truck, so he can't do that. But Miles's girl was there with her vehicle. So he's like, oh, well, I'll give her the ticket, and then you just get all your stuff back and you guys can just, go home. And so I'm like, all right, whatever. And that's great. Sounds good.
So that was you picked option 3?
It was better than what was happening a minute ago, right? So then he's like, you guys can go pack up all your stuff. It's fine. But I won't give you your pistol back until you're packed up and ready to go. Because just for my own safety. Blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, So we go and pack up all our stuff. And we're getting ready. And he comes over and he brings over the ticket and he starts reading what the ticket says. And it's like, girl, it's like, for parking on an officer, this or that or something. He's like, man. He's like, I fucked this all, or not fucked it all up, but he's like, I did this wrong. And so he's like, I'll just rip it up. So he just rips it up. Goes over and gives me my shit back, including prohibited by law magazines. And just sends me on my way. And I'm like, you know me, I can't just leave it alone. I'm just like, there's a fucking reason that all happened. There's a reason that there's no, because, my understanding is that kind of shit don't happen. They don't like that kind of shit.
But what do you mean?
Like,
what do you mean?
Well, like those magazines and stuff like that are taken pretty seriously.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay.
So, for the conversational purposes, I repinned them. Let's say. When I got home, I repinned the magazines so they're legal again. Just in case. But because, we'll get to that later, because I'm like, well, is it this? Is it the Alberta thing? Because Alberta's pushing back. But the RCMP don't work for Alberta. So why the fuck? I just can't leave alone. Why?
So you're with him talking now? Or?
No, I'm gone.
Oh, you're gone. Okay.
Moment. I just can't, I can't just let it rest on why I got away with this. But I feel like it's got something to do with being Indian. And because everything was until I mentioned lawyers and Indians. So I got home and I start searching. And sure enough, when the articles, when Bill C-68 was introduced and voted on in 1995, they didn't go through the proper channels. And there's like, so, you know what? I should just, so that I don't fuck it up completely.
Do you want me to read it? I've got it here.
Do you have the whole thing?
Yeah, the big one is probably going to blow the entire act out of the water the first time it is used by a lawyer representing an Aboriginal person, that thing?
No, that's not.
When the government negotiated the James Bay Treaty? Goes back.
Yeah, that's part of it, but I only sent you a snippet of it. I didn't send you the.
Do you want me to read this part and then you can fill in what I miss?
No, because I don't really know it. Here, I got it here. Maybe it does. That probably is the whole thing that you've got there, actually. Yeah.
So when the government negotiated the James Bay Treaty with the Aboriginal peoples, one of the provisions was that the treaty would become a part of the Constitution of Canada. Therefore, any violations of the terms of that treaty are unconstitutional, and legislation enacted while violating that treaty is void from its day of birth. The treaty requires that any legislation that will have any effect on Aboriginal hunting must be presented to and scrutinized by a council set up by the treaty itself before being presented to Parliament for action. That was not done. Although C-68 clearly does heavily affect Aboriginal hunting. During the House committee hearings on C-68, Reform MP and Justice critic Jack Ramsey brought that out very clearly. The government admitted that it had not done what the treaty required. Liberal Chairman Warren Allman refused to allow the committee to drop the consideration of Bill C-68 for unconstitutionality and the committee's liberal majority voted to ignore the entire problem. This was an incredible demonstration of arrogance, ignorance, and incompetence. It's going to come back to haunt the liberals. The first time an Aboriginal person is set up on charges under any provision of C-68, his lawyer is going to be able to claim that C-68 was never legally before the House, therefore could never have been legally enacted, and it is therefore null and void in its entirety. I do wonder what the Supreme Court of Canada will do with that mess.
So that's what I was finding in a few spots. So I was like tugging on that, and I keep tugging. So I'm like, well, this is worth putting an email together that includes all this stuff and an accusation that me as an Indigenous person have been personally slighted by this legislation, especially by recent additions to it, because all the new gun bans, handgun freezes, all of that
is based on this.
Is amendments to that act. So if that goes, it all goes. So I was like, oh, it's worth sending out some emails just to see what sticks. So I emailed the Chief Firearms Officer of Alberta with, my name's Darren Grimes. I mean, I basically copy pasted a bunch of that stuff from in that thing because of this treaty and blah, blah, blah. And these guys already said this. And I took out the parts about it when the Supreme Court, blah, 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 what it's going to do with it. And I just left it at because of these fucking treaty violations. And these people already talked about it and the Liberals already admitted to it. Now I can't fucking do A, B, and C, and I don't even have access anymore. And
here's the thing. You can't bring a handgun to protect yourself from a bear in the bush.
Yeah.
This is I was going to get back to context a little bit for the American friends and other people around the world that are listening, where you can't even go hunting with a handgun as protection. There's a lot of people, I'm sure in America, they have their rifles and shit, and they also have a handgun in case something runs up on you, right?
Yeah, that. And my angle is just firearms, right? So at the end of the day, but sure, let's call it that. So I put the email together. I sent it to our buddies over at the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms in Canada, because I made a few contacts over there over all the COVID stuff. And I sent it to what was the other one?
The NFA. Remember?
Oh yeah, and then I sent it to the contact box of the Canadian National Firearms Association, and then to the of the Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs Canada, to the Assessment Investigation Department. And I wasn't expecting to really hear back from anyone, but I heard back from everyone except the Chief Firearms Officer is the only one I've heard.
That's pretty fast.
Back from I heard back from the lawyer within 15 minutes.
Wow.
Okay. So, do I have I thought I did. I thought I had them all in here. I didn't have that one. Okay, let me find it.
Okay, but the other thing I want to ask you is because I have a hard time picturing how this happens in the bush. So, what do you guys are? Are out. So you're out there going far into the bush to shoot guns and stuff like that, right? To be safe, you go out there to shoot or hunt or whatever, and you have these fish and wildlife rangers roaming around looking for people that are breaking gun laws, or fishing licenses and all. They're doing. They're just roaming around the woods checking on everybody.
Yeah, he said he was there because he was going to tell us we couldn't be parked where we were parked. He couldn't see my truck, but he could see her truck. So that's why he came over, and then So anyway, I sent my email to the JCCF, including my interpretations, right? So I added my stuff at the end that basically said my current interpretation is that the Firearms Act of Canada is unconstitutional and at a minimum does not apply to status Indians. What are your thoughts? And 15 minutes later, I got, hi, Darren, I have read your email with great interest. I would like to get additional information on your particular circumstance in order to provide a more informed opinion. I would be interested in, one, exploring the constitutionality of the legislation, And 2, considering whether you have treaty rights trumping this legislation. If you're interested in blah, 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 we'll get to paralegal, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, long story short, I said, yes, I was. And now they're going to get back to me in a couple of days and book a call because they got a couple of paralegals that are getting some information together to see what sort of a case we have. If we have.
Yeah.
And then when I let the national firearms people know that, because I'd already kind of talked to them and let them know what was going on and what I thought. And they're like, listen, buddy, I agree with you, but to take on the government, you're talking about, tens of millions of dollars and years and years and years and just perpetual blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I think, I was talking to some people over at the Justice Center and it seems like they're interested in maybe doing it. And then, like, if you already discussed this with the JCCF, we would definitely be interested in participating in that conversation. Just so you understand, there could be some legal jeopardy for yourself in pursuing something like this.
What does that mean?
Ultimately affect the status of your firearms license. I don't know. I bounce that back off the lawyers.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like, political persecution. If they'll come back after me for this incident or find another reason to try to take my guns, which I don't think.
Shut the podcast down.
Being an Indian. Please let us know what your plans with the JCCF are. So that we can determine how Canada's National Armed Firearms Association might assist. Blair Hagen, Executive Vice President, Canadian National Firearms Association. And then the one I sent to the Crown Services took about 45 minutes before they got back to me and said that, thanks for contacting the Allegations and Complaints Office of Crown Indigenous Relations in Northern Affairs Canada and Indigenous Services Canada. Please note that your concerns have been forwarded to the right personnel in the Aboriginal Treaty Aboriginal government for their response. So all of them were pretty responsive right away. I was quite surprised. I don't know if I'll hear from the chief firearms officer or not. But as of now, as it stands, I'm going to work on maybe trying to challenge that Bill C-68 has unfairly affected my Indigenous rights to
protect yourself,
firearms for hunting, etc. I think you got to frame it all as hunting. So it's affecting my access for hunting and blah, blah, blah. But the ultimate goal would be, of course, to have it thrown out for being unconstitutional. That's the angle. That's the top priority that I'm talking about with the lawyer right now. That'd be the number one goal, is to have it completely thrown out.
But I mean, they trampled all over the Constitution for the last 3 years. I mean, they don't give a fucking shit what's in that Constitution, right? They don't.
No, they don't. But I mean, if you can get the axe thrown out, like a lot of that happened, right?
Yeah.
Later. So we'll see what happens.
So would you be able to get some sort of thing for you only? Like, would you be able to get some special permission for yourself, or would you want to get the whole act?
It would either be Indians or the whole act.
The whole act,
unless they pulled me aside and were like, hey, man.
Hey, here's a special permit.
Well, I was thinking if there's any way I could go after them for damages, but
yeah, I know. I was just thinking that too.
I can't think of how to pull any money out of it. You know what I mean? I can't think of how to phrase it so that they have to pay me money because of how I was financially, or
Well, I mean, it would be the people that were killed that weren't able to protect themselves, kind of thing. It would seem, or something like that.
Protection's not an option.
Why, because of another bill?
Because of the treaties. All my argument is all based on treaties. So,
but don't you have a right to protect yourself from the treaties?
No,
what?
I don't think so.
Really?
I just have a right to have firearms, and the main catch is that they probably could have asked all the council Indians, and the Indians would have said, no problem, you can do that, we're fine with it. The thing is that they didn't, and maybe the Indians wouldn't. I mean, from what I've heard now, I've started looking back into it. It seems like there was a lot of protesting about it at the time and stuff like that.
Oh, so interesting. They didn't want to open up another can of worms. Just want to slide it through. Yeah.
but I'm gonna go after them.
Because that would have caused a whole media storm, and then everybody would have been all over them for it.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but it's fucking weird. And now that some pretty high up people in the legal and gun world, specifically constitutional legality, are pretty interested in it right away. Like, I didn't have to wait a week or two for a reply. It was like, boom,
That's
whoa, what are you
crazy.
talking about? What do you
That's
got?
crazy. Yeah, you should. I mean, that would be some pretty good activism right there. Especially because, none of us really agree with, that bill and what they're doing. So, and it's interesting because they're going to come after them more. I mean, look what's happening in the States with the guns, right? So it's interesting timing for that as well.
Yeah, man, I like the idea of, I'd love whatever I can do, it'll be fun. I think, because I'm not really going to do anything, honestly. It's got nothing to do with fucking me. I'm just the dude who's going to, I don't know, maybe light the match, because it's going to come down to lawyers that know what the fuck they're talking about. I don't know I can't, I'm not going to be on the stand saying shit. It's going to be people a lot smarter than me, who know the rules laws a lot smarter than I am, and can, but then you need someone, you need a litigant or whatever, right? You need whatever it would be called. You need the dude to be versus the crown.
Interesting how they let this thing go too, right? I mean,
it would need to be an Indian.
Yeah.
In this,
but interesting how they wouldn't touch it. They, like the head of the RCP goes, well, no, don't open this can of worms. Just let the guy go.
I don't know what was said. I don't know what was.
Well,
said.
You can imagine it was like, no, we're not. So
the other thing I didn't mention is that, so after he came back, did I tell you that he said it was not in public interest to charge me with anything? So that phrase, not in the public interest, came up like 7 times more after that. In the last 20 minutes, that not in the public interest came up over and over and over. And it didn't get mentioned at all.
Like, it shouldn't even matter about the public.
Well,
right?
I don't know. I don't know what is the public what's the public's best interest? Where did that come from? But he got someone he talked to on the phone said that.
Yeah,
because he picked that up from them, and then he was like parroting it. I don't think he knows what the fuck was going on.
But like, I just don't. I mean, I understand why they would say that. It's not in the public interest for this to get out of control. I mean, I think that's what it is, but it's just a strange way to put it, right? It's not in the public interest. Like, well, it is actually in the public interest for this to get out, but
I don't know. My thought is it probably comes up here and there, but
maybe
people would just be like, whew, that was close, and shut the fuck up. But I'm an idiot, so I've decided to rumble this motherfucker as best I can and see what comes out. I mean, it might be nothing. They could call me next week and say, nah, man, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But everyone seems pretty interested right now.
Well, that's what I mean. It's the timing, because there's rumors about them going after the guns again. There was that stuff that came up, a couple of weeks ago when we talked about it.
Yeah, if I could even gum it all up for a while, and those are the people that have the money to keep it tied up in court.
Here's one. What about you being harassed at the border?
Well, that's going to come up next, because now once I have the active lawsuit going, then every time something happens, I'm going to.
Yeah, but you're already being harassed. I mean, don't you need some compensation for being harassed at the border just for trying to legally bring a gun across?
That's a good point.
Fucking right. They're hassling.
Social embarrassment. I should go for fucking $500,000.
There you go.
I'll see what the lawyers say. They're not really that kind of lawyers. Do they get money for people? I don't care about money. That's the thing.
You'll be like, look, I'm marked as an Indian because I'm trying to bring a gun legally across this border.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to get into all that. I just want to fucking get some gun rights for everybody, or at least myself and my Indian brothers.
Man, you've got war in the heart.
Because I feel like if they have to give gun rights back to a bunch of fucking Indians, then the rest of the country ain't going to take that line down either. You know what I mean? Everyone's going to be like, what the fuck? And then, it's just going to be hard to do anything again. And it's going to become a huge election item. And I just love to see it.
Let's just go to Rebel News right now.
Dude, if you can get me I won't say what I talked. I mean, I'm not interested in saying what I said on the podcast on national television. I don't think they're not really on national television, I guess. But I would be hunky-dory to talk about everything else, the treaties and everything that you were reading and all that stuff. But wait until I talk to the lawyer.
Yep.
You should just send them all that info, though.
No, well, let's talk after you talk to the lawyer.
Yeah. We should see what they say first. This might have already been a huge mistake. What? No one's listening. Anyway, support the show. grimerica.ca/support. If you can, when you can. Maybe for legal bills. We'll see. I'm hoping it doesn't cost me anything. It shouldn't cost me anything. Those guys just do stuff for free. Seems like that. So anyway, support the show. We can't do without you. There's great content, I think. Who else is actively fucking fighting the government as hard as we are?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Speaking of which, you got to go back down over the border. Is it all willy-nilly now? You're good to go? No problem? Is it open?
I don't know.
I thought it was over.
Well, I thought it was too, but then some people say that the CDC has some weird bivalent thing from, I don't know. I don't even want to talk about it. It's fine.
Like
it's fine. And I'm fine. What?
Well, it did seem like there was some that said air travel for now and land travel was still like indefinite.
Oh, fuck. I don't know. I'm fine. It's fine.
Bring it just
I'm jabbed. Look, I've had this thing.
Really jabbed.
I've had this thing.
No adverse effects.
We're all jabbed now.
Bingo bango. All right, brother. What else?
Eli. I got some synchronicities, my own personal slew of little mini synchros, but I'll save it for next show. Next intro.
Yeah. Give us the bio.
So Eli Coberly is a world traveler and seeker of truth through adventure. At 17, he left his small Pacific Northwest town to fulfill his dream of becoming an Army paratrooper. At 20, he was honorably discharged and began his search for a new dream. His writing has taken him worldwide to explore a few of the bigger questions of our human existence. And his prophetic worldview combines military service, counterculture, and the anthropology and archaeology of the world's religious symbols. A yoga therapist, he's a student of yoga for over a decade. While he isn't writing or practicing yoga, he can be found examining Tibetan Buddhist traditions, sitting in ceremony with Maya priests, and traversing caves in the deep and the Belize jungle. Oh, sounds fun. He currently resides in Northern California. There you go. Enjoy this chat, eh?
Enjoy the chat with Eli Coberly.
And the next little intro, the next little bit will be.
All right. Good thing you remembered. What's his name again?
John D. Herrera, about the Article 5. There's a little clip in there of him.
Update with John and then Eli Coberly. So enjoy the chat, guys. Support the show. And tell us what you think.
John D. Herrera, thanks for coming on to talk about this your passion project.
Yeah, the passion project. The passion project is all about the people who are alive today, who are kind of stumbling over the need to act and would like to participate in something meaningful. That it's kind of developed into that. And it's been a number of years that I've been politically and legally activating for the Article 5 Convention. It's this provision in the Constitution that allows the people who were alive at the time to come together and say, hey, does anyone got a good idea? And, of course, the powers that be, they don't want a convention. So they've been preventing a convention for many years now. And that's why things look so screwed up today, is because the states are being denied this discussion, i.e. the people alive today are being denied the discussion. So I was co-founder of a national group with Tom Brennan, who's a former Chief Justice from the state of Michigan, and Bill Walker, journalist, Eagle Scout, constitutional scholar guy. And we co-founded Friends of the Article 5 Convention. And we went on to go into the congressional records and show that the states have satisfied this clause, but we're just being held hostage by the Congress. That said, there are now more Americans than ever aware of this provision.
Yep.
And they're looking at the government today and they're saying, hey, you know what? A convention can't be scarier than that.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
wasn't there
you know,
wasn't there some
right?
headway? Like, wasn't there some headway a few months back with somebody else doing it?
Yeah, there's been a lot of plot points in this, a lot of people coming online to this idea and what's going on. And so I think we're there at the tipping point. And, you know, the tipping point principle is that once something becomes cognizant in the population at large, that it automatically spills over.
Right.
And so I think the folks in power know, and there are many plot points I can explain, you know, maybe at a later show if you want to go in depth on it, but they know a convention's coming. And so one of the ways to help keep the pressure on and to help dispel the fears of a convention, because there's a lot of Americans that are getting drummed in their head day and night, like, oh my God, we can't have this convention. It's going to blow up the Constitution.
Right.
We don't have people smart enough for that. That's the dumbest thing ever. Right. But really, a convention is just a non-binding deliberative assembly. And it's just formally discussing our situation rather than informally discussing it on Facebook comment section.
Right. Yeah.
And so all that said, so Tom and Bill passed away with COVID. And I said, well, everything's done online. Let's just have an online convention. So I had someone build a website for me. I paid the Bulletin software, which is very widely known software, and they've perfected it. It can handle millions of users, etc. That's locked in a cloud. So there's going to be no advertising, no phishing, no flashing memes, none of that stuff. And this is an opportunity for any American who cares to lead by example. You know, we're being denied a convention, so let's just do it online, and let's you know, and of course I'll leave it on the internet, and it'll be a testament to say this is what this thing is, and it is actually what we ought to be doing as a society and civilization, because everyone, you know, 9 out of 10 people understand that things are concerning.
Yeah. So how did people get a hold of you for this?
So the domain is articlevconvention.org, articlevconvention.org. And the splash page has a little bit of text that I had up there in a while, but I haven't been able to get someone to change it for me. So, but there's a splash page with information, and then in the top right-hand corner, it'll say forums. So you click on the forums, that takes you into the cloud. And then in the top right-hand corner of that, it'll say sign up or log in. And you sign up and log in. Now, on the forum, if anyone goes to the forum, there's a post in there now that says, please declare yourself a delegate. And you'll see we just had a new delegate volunteer today. And so there's 16 on there now. We just need 50. You know, the number 50 is kind of arbitrary, but I just think, you know, 50 Americans talking about amendment language, that should be legitimate. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, we'd like more than 50. But yeah, it's going to be historic. And not because I say it's going to be historic. It's because it is going to be historic. It's never been done. We've never got a group of Americans together to be, you know, sober and serious and say, what's a good amendment? Oh, you know, you don't like that part? What can we do? You know, and just go through that deliberative process to the point that the delegates realize, we talked about everything. I make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
And then the convention adjourns, and that's never been done before.
Well, I hope so, because it could, you know, we could see some real change from that.
Well, you know, if you know, there's the metaphor, if you were a visitor from another galaxy and you rolled up on Earth, that metaphor, if you look down on it, on the global stage, America's a premier player, And if you change the dialogue of that character, that changes human civilization.
Yep. Well, thanks for the
So
update,
anyway,
John. Yeah, thanks for the update. We'll I'll put the link. I'll put the link
and
to
if
that in
you-
the show notes, and yeah, appreciate it.
Okay, excellent. I totally appreciate it. And if you guys want to do a deep dive on the thing, there are some really fascinating plot points to this whole thing, and some really interesting information. And so I'd be happy to come on again before May 25th if you guys feel like.
All right, buddy. I don't think we're gonna have time before May 25th, but maybe we'll do it after that.
Okay.
All right, buddy.
All right. Yeah,
Okay.
I really, really appreciate your time, and I hope you guys have a great show.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks,
Okay,
John.
we'll be in touch. We'll keep in touch.
All right.
Okay. Okay, bye.
Okay. All right. Aloha.
Eli Coberly, welcome to Grimerica. How's it going?
I'm good, Graham. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this will be fun. This will be fun. I just finished reading a book on from 1885. It was really a scientific book on vanished races. It's called Prehistoric World Vanished Races. And there was a couple huge chapters on what you talk about in your book, like on what would you call it? Central America, I guess, Mexico, so good timing for me to read your book after sort of getting like an old scientific view of that area.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones. I found some actually in Central America in this library.
Oh, really? Other books?
Yeah, like a lot of Mormon books and things like that, or books about travelers that you wouldn't think or wouldn't know about.
How old do you think they would be, those books?
A lot of them were, I'd say there was 1700s, 1800s, 1900s. They were
Really?
just kind of, yeah, in Chiapas, Mexico, there's a library that belongs to these archaeologists, and they had all sorts of stuff in there. But I haven't read that book. I know it's probably like the antediluvian kind of thing. Goes back to Atlantis or something, maybe.
No, it's super mainstream. Like it's, I would say, I mean, that's why I kind of found it interesting is they talk about the mound builders and how extensive they go into, like it's 100 and something pages on mound builders. And then they go into the Mayan and the Nahua tribes and the Aztecs, and they spend quite a bit of time in Central and North America. But the sense is that I got is that they got a lot of the cultural stuff wrong, but they also kind of didn't treat them. They knew how massive these civilizations were, all the ruins that they were finding, but they didn't really go into too much detail on that because it was just all like they were constantly finding stuff, I guess, which is kind of the feeling I got from your book as well, that there's just so much there.
Yeah, I mean, even like Chichen Itza, one of the most famous places, it has like 70% still uncovered or something.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff. They just don't have the time or the funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you go out? Is there spots like where you can go out and just explore on your own kind of thing and find stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could. I've been to a lot of places, like when I went out to El Mirador in the jungle in Petén region in Guatemala, up northeast. It's by Tikal. That's one of the famous places, but it's way out. I mean, it's right on the border of Mexico, Guatemala. So I saw a lot of places that were looted. You just see a mound and then a hole that goes right in the middle of the mound, and people know, this could have the burial. That's what they're looking for, is all the loot. So, but yeah, you could just go in any direction in Guatemala, northwest, northeast Guatemala, and you could probably find a lot.
So how long have you been traveling around that area? Because you've been sort of going all over the world, right?
Yeah, it's been since 2010, that area, but I guess the first pyramid I went to was 2006.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know, 15 years or so.
Yeah. So what made you decide to write a book about all this?
Well, let's see. I was into yoga, and I was into the reason why people do yoga. So I love mythology, and I love archaeology, and I love anthropology. So I figured, well, why are people doing yoga? And then what is the reason behind this vanishing civilization, like the Maya of Central America? Like, why, how did they vanish? And then I found out they didn't vanish at all. They were just subjugated and kind of like dispersed and brought into culture, up to speed with the colonialism, so to speak. So I got into it just because I was curious and fascinated about the story of humans and otherworldly things. I was always into like mysteries and mythology. I mean, I love the X-Files. I watched that when I was a kid growing up. So anything that's unexplained, I love.
So you decided to put all that together and put it into a book?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted, like, when I went to the pyramids, I felt an energy that I thought was like kundalini. Like, they have the experience of, the energy rising up through your spine. And when I went to the pyramids, I felt that. I felt this tangible energy, and I'd read books about it. And I thought, well, yoga isn't limited to the Far East, and maybe there's something to this. And so I wanted to know. I also knew that they were studying opposites, like masculine, feminine, or they were sort of talking about the heart a lot. And I thought, well, has to do with yoga too. They talk about these qualities within the self. And I was just going through a discovery of myself after I got into yoga, and I wanted to have a reason and a story behind why people relate the way they do, like, the sexes and the sort of imbalances and all these kind of things in the world. There's a lot to it, and I just had time on my hands, honestly, and I wanted to jump into something mysterious and helpful.
Which pyramids were those that you start in 2006?
The first one I went to was Caracol in Belize. And that's like, if you go to Belize City, you just head west and go towards the border, Guatemala. And that's like Caracol means snail, but it's really about the spiral and the concept of time. And so, cyclical time as opposed to linear. But I went to, I think I've been to 100 Maya sites now. So I've been to most of them.
Do you drive a car? Like, do you just rent a car and drive around to these places when you go, or how are you doing this most of the time?
Yeah. So the first one that I went to, I went to a psychic, and they said, "Oh, go to Central America and check out these places." I said, "Okay, why not?" And so I followed. I read this book. Forget what, Serpent of Light, it was called, by Drunvalo Melchizedek.
I knew you were going to mention that book. I thought of that book while I was reading yours. I thought this sounds like the Serpent of Light.
Yeah, it was a huge inspiration. So I actually followed his trail and his ideas. And then once I got into what he was about, I was like, whoa, some of this stuff is like cultish and weird. But what I did was it gave me a chance to explore it. So I got in a rental car that first time that I went by myself. I went to a couple places like with my wife and stuff back in the day. But the first time by myself, I went to 7 sites, and I brought all these crystals and put one in each site and did a meditation. And, it was like the 7 chakras, like in his book. And I thought that's a cool way to explore it. But I rented a car and got in there and drove as fast as I could to all the different sites, because I only had 10 days. And so 8 to 10 days, I think. And it was a long period, but it included Palenque and up north in the Yucatan and all these other places. Labna, Uxmal, and all these, let's see, I'm trying to remember the other ones, but There's about 7 or 10 I went to.
How would you do it now if you went back? Like, how would you suggest we do it?
Oh, well, I mean, now I have a trip planned in May, and I'm going to the Usumacinta River. It's on Guatemala, Mexico, northwest Guatemala in the jungle there. But if you're to do it, I would go to Palenque. That's my favorite site of all. And I would fly into Veracruz or Villahermosa, actually. And then
Which country's Palenque in again?
Palenque is in Chiapas in Mexico, the state of
Right.
Chiapas. And that's in the jungle. That's the one, like, if you go Ancient Aliens, you'll see on Ancient Alien Pakal's sarcophagus and the rocket ship idea and all this. That's where that's at.
And that's where you would go. But would you do like a tour? Like, if you were us, would you do a tour around these things, or how would you do some of these?
Yeah, I would get in the car and I would get, or shuttle, and I would go to Palenque. I'd stay there a couple of days and check it all out. Because there's lots of other stuff going on, you know, and the museum is one of the coolest museums that they have of any of the sites, I'd say. I'd stay there a couple of days, then I'd go to Yaxchilan, and I'd go to Bonamapac, and I would go to Piedras Negras, where I'm headed this time in May. And they're all along the river, so the cool adventure is you get in the car, you go to Palenque, you check it out for a couple of days, and then you can get on a boat, and there's crocodiles, and you know, and it's rough rapids, and you're going upriver. It's pretty adventure like, and then you go to these ruins that are just seemingly like, you know, out of nowhere they come up, and all of a sudden you're like, get off the boat, and then you go into the jungle, and there they are. So it's really adventurous, and more than like if you go to Cancun and go to Chichen Itza, that's like full of people, and sometimes there's no one at any of these sites at all.
Yeah,
You get to go inside them.
Yeah, there's some like in Yaxchilan, there's a big tunnel. They have like the corbel archways, and so you could just go in there, and it's actually like a maze underneath the whole system. It's like a cave system, like underneath the pyramid, and that's really cool.
Do they have any sort of chambers or anything resembling the pyramids in Egypt?
Well, that in Palenque, it's, you know how the Sphinx and the plateau Giza has those 3 pyramids that are lined up like Orion and Orion's belt. So those are like the stars, the M42 constellation. That in Palenque, in the cross group behind the main plaza, is lined up the same way, has the same cosmology built into it.
Did you get the sense then that this was also antediluvial or like old as old as Egypt, or
Yeah,
you know, from a time scale type thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that if you think about like one, how it's built, it lines up the same as the constellation, but also they're referring to certain gods, and they're also referring to a time period in pre-dynastic Egypt, which is right. It's, you know, the beginning of the Maya calendar is pre-dynastic Egypt, and so that's right around the time where they were sort of playing with all these same concepts in their cosmology, and they're also talking about like the Hearthstone cosmology is sort of like the three stones where they cook their tortillas is representing the center of the universe, which is also the 3 stars that are in the Orion's constellation that they look up to. So I think, and also if you look in the cross group further into all the glyphs and everything, they're really alluding to time travel and to things of other worlds, and I would say that it's very, very hearkening to Atlantis and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the things that resonated with your book, I mean, is just that, like, you know, that how massive this ancient culture is. I still don't think we really understand it. Even from an alternative media perspective, I still don't think we really have our heads wrapped around how important that was. And also the importance of death, you know, or the lack of our fear of death, I guess, in our culture, you know, and then I want to talk about, like, you know, the culture that you figure, the ancient culture versus kind of like the culture that we destroyed through colonialism, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, I mean,
view shifts along that way.
Yeah, I mean, so like when I was following the Khan dynasty, which is like this puppet rulership of people from like Teotihuacan in Mexico City, where they have that Avenue of the Dead and the Pyramid of the Sun and the Moon. So I was following it in 2016. They uncovered all these rulers that were Khan rulers, and Khan means serpent in Maya or Mayan language. So I wanted to study the serpent cosmology and the glyphs around the serpent. And it happened to be that I was wondering about creationism and Christianity and all this, and right around that time, I'd already went to the place where they put the lidar in, like they fly over and they put the lidar down there, and then they beam up the lasers, and they can tell like, okay, who is living here in the jungle, how many people, and they found there's like 1 million people. So this was no small civilization, and certainly they had the ability to travel and all those sort of things. But yeah, I think there was a lot of keep me on track too, because I'll sort of space off, and
Yeah, no problem.
like ask me the question again or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I got the sense that you thought that they came over across the Atlantic at some point. I don't know if you mentioned they're traveling back and forth, but I guess just the extensiveness of the Central American culture. See, I don't even know how to talk about it because I get mixed up with the map because so much of this is in Mexico too, that I have a hard time. I wanted to try and think of how to express this to you. Because I was thinking, about the show and how I've got this map of North America stuck in my head where we're in Canada and then we have the States, and that's all like, I grew up just thinking this is like, Western civilization, like, and Mexico is part of that, but just sort of poor, different type of thing. But those borders really don't exist. And this ancient culture like came all the way up to, I mean, maybe even like you mentioned the Chaco Canyon, that kind of stuff. It kind of goes all the way down through Central America. Right. And I don't know where the boundaries are for those cultures, like the Maya and the Aztecs and the,
Yeah. I mean, it's proven they migrated to Chaco Canyon. There was quetzal feathers from the jungles of Central America, that bird with the colorful feathers, like, and there was also the spirals. Everyone had spirals, like, so spirals are on all the rocks around the world.
They're even in the Utah. We're going to be going to a trip here in 420 in Zion. There's those petroglyphs in Zion with the spirals.
Yeah. And so those are like in tons of different time periods, and they're all around cultures looking for water too. Like, it's like, so the migrations, they sort of follow the stars, but also the water, where, we need water, we need it to drink. It's sacred, it's holy. And there's something to that, right? The vortexes and the energy. And so that's why a lot of these sites, if you go to Central America, were built on top of water aqueducts. It's electricity conductor. But travel was happening, and if you go to the museums like in Chiapas, like I mentioned, that one of the books, I took several pictures all throughout Central America, and I have it on my website of like a Japanese face, a Chinese boat weight, a guy in a yoga pose, a Viking with a beard, a Phoenician hat. Like, I mean, that's in stone, and it was at a totally different time period. When they made it, it was a different time period than when these cultures existed. So at a very minimum, they knew about other cultures, and they knew about their technology, and whether it was in a boat or from meditating and tapping into some cosmic force, we don't know, but it was a reality that they knew because it's written in stone.
Yeah. The other thing it made me think about is this new clean technology that apparently is being unveiled. I don't know if you've heard of Randall Carlson at all, but I was thinking you should. I'd love it if you could look at these lectures on this new technology that's based on some of the ancient works that you mentioned in your book as well. It's based on the Vajra and some of the Sanskrit texts and sacred geometry. And this guy has tied together like some of the dimensions in the solar system with time to figure out like resonant frequency of the elements, and like it just fits together. And it's apparently, he's made it into a technology that's clean. So I'd love, because you've been talking about this type of thing from your book, and even technology is more from Central South America, but see what you think of that.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll send you a link.
I'm not a scientist. I don't have a degree. I don't really understand math that well, but what I do know is mythology and cosmology, and I do know those symbols, and I do have a lot of common sense, which not a lot of people have. It seems all the time they're sort of they're stretching their experience to try and come up with these new ideas. But I'm just like, I can understand the chakras, and I can understand the colors in a rainbow, and I can understand a Sri Yantra, which means the holy device in Sanskrit, and I can see where that plays out, and I can also count the numbers, and that's what I did in my book, and how that relates to the body and the soul and all that kind of stuff.
So what did you name it? The war in the hearts of men.
Why did I name it?
Yeah.
Because I felt that I wanted to explain a reason why masculinity was such a, how do I put it? It's not, a lot of people label it like, oh, this is about toxic masculinity. I didn't necessarily feel that way. I just felt that there's a lot of people who are using their masculinity in weakness and calling it strength. And I felt like a lot of people go along with plans because it's always the reality of what has always been done. They follow their father's footsteps. And I felt that there's too much destruction in the world, and it's been sort of because we always did it this way, or everyone shut up and get in line kind of thing. And so the war in the hearts of men is like the concept of warring in your heart about choices. Like, instead of doing what's best for society or for the group, you do what's best for yourself. Or I had my own stuff around like trusting certain people, and it's about finding balance in the heart and going on your own journey, your own experience for more of a oneness. And because I felt it to be a self-help book and without steps, with just an example of what one person could do to become closer to the essence of themselves without reading like 13 hacks to freedom or whatever, like there's so many self-help books that you could just toss out the window all day long. Like, when I thought this is a cool thing, because this is just my example on what I learned by learning about culture. I learned about myself.
And were you pretty disillusioned after being in the what's the word for it, army? Or
yeah, I was in the army. I was a paratrooper in the mid to late 90s, 82nd Airborne Division. So I was infantry, and we went overseas, and I saw a lot of oil collection and fighter pilot stuff. So these guys are building the F-14 Tomcat, and they're like, the Saudis are all excited to spend their oil money, and we're excited to do commerce with Ramco, which is, the last year the biggest grossing oil company in the world, Ramco. And that's what I was over there guarding assets. And so I discovered that, whoa, this war thing, which I was motivated to, join the army because I wanted to make a difference. I saw this torso of a soldier in the street getting drugged through Somalia. So I said, oh, I'm signing up now. And I was 15 and a half. My mom signed a note. And I was like, and I left when I was 17, and less than a year later, I was in Saudi Arabia, and I was guarding paperwork and assets and it was counterterrorism. We were looking for bombs and patrolling the streets, and we never found any bombs, no weapons, WMDs or whatever, right?
Brutal. What was the point where you had a turnaround point where I think you were asked didn't you stand down or something at some point? Want to talk about that?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. No one's asked me about that one yet. That's cool. So I was up in this tower, right? It's what was it called? Eagletown, right? And it's Eagletown. It's this big compound with, as you can imagine, a compound with razor wires and everything, and towers and checkpoints, for the people coming in that are workers that work in the chow hall or whatever. But anyway, I was just dozing off. The sun's coming up, and I'm like behind a machine gun, and I see this guy running towards the wire, and he's like, "Oh, are like running, and I'm like, oh shoot, what do I do? And I look down at there's a rule book, right? SOPs or whatever, and it says shoot anyone who's running towards a wire. And so I'm like, but I can see clearly from here. I got my binoculars, US Air Force. Why would I shoot one of us? And I said, no, I'm not going to shoot him. And they said, you have your orders. And I'm like, yeah, but the orders are bullshit. Like, why would I want to shoot this guy? And then, 30 seconds later, something, they're like, yeah, Coberly, don't shoot that guy. And so had I listened to these idiots, I would have shot this guy and I would have lit him up because I had a machine gun. There's like 100 rounds sitting right there. And he would have been in the wire and it would have been my fault. And so I was like, it was a pivotal moment because had I done that, I would have been court-martialed and been a murderer. And it would, but it was, they were the ones telling me, but shit rolls downhill, I guess. And so I just decided then and there, I was like, no, this isn't the country I want to support, this, young men dying for no reason. I'm sure, and it got much worse with Afghanistan and all that. Luckily, I didn't have to go there. So I really support the vets and all that. It's important.
Did you do the South America thing while you were down in South America and get into the ayahuasca?
Yeah, I tried ayahuasca, but actually at Big Sur, California. I don't know if you know where that is.
I think we have a buddy that surfs there quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a good surf spot. They got a good break there. But it's in Esalen, the Esalen hot springs there. But it's a, there was a cult that I brushed up against and my girlfriend was in it and I just wanted to be like, try something new, and I'd tried all the other psychedelics. So I thought this would be cool. But for me, it changed my life immensely. And I've never been physically as strong as I was before. It weakened my physical strength and my capacity for, let's say, the way I associated as a man, it became totally different after that experience. I could barely
after the ayahuasca.
Yeah,
Wow.
I couldn't, like, it was just the example. What I associated masculinity was like my physicality my whole life, and in an instant, it was like as soon as I tried it, it was just gone. And I basically I had all these things where I realized I was out of integrity and I was acting out of selfishness, and I really took a hard look at my life. And I also had a death, and my soul left my body and came back, and they didn't believe me, and they were really unsupportive. And I said, I think, there's something wrong. I'm dying. They're like, no, it's just a death or whatever. And because it was kind of like one of those,
they were saying like death of the ego and all that stuff.
yeah, but it was actually like I saw my body. I was going up into the stars, and I said, oh my God, like I want to live. And I felt myself go back down. So I don't think it was just some ego death. I mean, granted, yeah, it was, and they didn't believe me, but it took me about a good year to fully reach, like, to be able to just do daily tasks and, and really feel like in my body. And it's been 8 years now. And so that was a one-time only thing. And it changed my perspective. And it got me probably it's the reason why I went on all these journeys and wrote this book, really, or one of the catalysts.
Wow. Yeah, you kind of warn people off of the new age gurus too, right? I mean, you're pretty critical of like the trend that's happening right now with psychedelics and the sort of, I don't know if you'd call it like new age movement or I think it's its whole own separate sort of movement now. It kind of encompasses, more different parts of our culture than just all these other sort of spiritual movements, because you got business people going to do it, biohackers going to do it. I mean, it's kind of like grabbing a bit of a cross section from everybody, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's a superhero on Instagram, right? And they're sort of. I saw the thing the other day, and this woman, and they're all hanging out. It's like, of course, I'm jealous. I don't have friends like them, and I get it. But it's like they're all in Sedona hanging out, and they have hundreds of thousands of followers, right? And they're all doing something good. They're doing breath work, and it's great. But they guarantee that you'll have 24 hours of bliss. And I thought, oh my God, if I had 24 hours of bliss, I wouldn't be a human. Like, all these things are like, the dogma. This, like a shaman saying, there's no dogma, but we're the new Native Americans. And to me, I was like, wait a second, like, what kind of dogma is that? How can you speak, we're the new Native Americans? We're a bunch of white privileged people from LA doing a psychedelic to change our lives because our parents were bastards, that kind of thing.
What does he mean by that? I don't even understand what he would mean by that.
I analyze it for years, because I have I never forget phrases or faces, right? People say. So he said, we're the new Native Americans. And I think either he meant that that his church, because he had a church, his church was going to change the way that everyone looked at the earth or something. I mean, that's the best positive thing I could think of, right? But I took it as, we know what's best for everyone else. That's how I took it. I could have been wrong, but it was off-putting. And I think there's a lot of people that, because they have an experience like myself or whatever, and you want to share it, right? You want to go out there and be like, yeah, let's like make the world a better place. But then it's like, you're sort of like trying to tell everyone what's best for them, when really that's why there's different religions and different opinions, and the world is beautiful because everyone has a different perspective. But like, I feel like that the tradition's important. And so that's why I always go back to the tradition. Like, like I studied meditation, I studied with Alan Wallace, who sat next to the Dalai Lama. When I wanted to get educated, I went to teachers in the root source of the place, because I wanted to have a pure experience, but also wanted to do something that was authentic and where I was actually learning tradition. Because I guess I'm in between generations, maybe like you guys, where like I do feel tradition is important, or like, I don't feel that you can just call yourself a spiritual guru because you have a lot of interest.
Or the shortcut, or just go for one ceremony and then you're sort of enlightened.
Yeah. Like it's like from puke bucket shuffler to angel person or something. I remember seeing that. Like, this time I'm getting everyone's puke and I'm tossing it in the hole, and the next time I'm sitting next to the shaman, like playing a guitar or something. I don't know if that makes sense, but
oh yeah, Darren.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's kind of like it's sort of like the way the culture sort of needs to seesaw back and forth between progression and, like, McKenna said, culture's not your friend, but I'm not sure I agree with them fully, because there's a whole lot of parts of a bunch of different cultures that seem pretty great when they start being gobbled up by monoculture or pop culture. Now it's political pop culture, where everything's politics. It's sort of shifted to in my lifetime. And I feel like my grandkids will grow up in a world where, there's no Dutch culture and Canadian culture and Mexican culture and all these different cultures that I would argue bring a lot of richness to the world, at the risk of division. So, I mean, I don't know if there's a question in there, but there's kind of a line to walk where you need to stick somewhat to the tradition. And I would argue right now we're a little off the rails. We've come a little maybe farther from tradition than we should in a bunch of different ways. On the right and the left, I could say. Whereas the right is maybe taking away some fundamental freedoms with some psychedelics and things like that for almost 100 years now, that would lead to expansion of consciousness and blah, 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 blah. And now, I'm not going to talk about it here, but now we're in this world where the left seems to be doing things that are crazy. I mean, with kids involved and stuff like that. And it's just like everybody's testing culture to some weird degree, and you got to sort of walk the line of that. And I wonder how we do that as we, because I mean, that McKenna thing seems like a trap. The throwing out all the culture seems to be how we get fucking Walmarts on every corner and the same fast food chains and the same gas stations and the same coffee shops. And everyone's watching the same fucking TV shows and the same movies, so they can all, it's become one giant monolithic culture. That's what I think we end up with if we start losing that tradition.
Yeah, and I think it's important to pay homage to the ancestors or the people who came before us, who set it up for us. Like, I mean, but yeah, it's like, how do you maintain the tradition without sort of, or with like throwing off the bad ideas, like,
like war.
Yeah, and being, no tolerance for homosexuals or whatever, like all this. So it's about tolerance for the other people. And I feel like we grow up and we have opinions, but are those our opinions? Or are they our father's opinion? Or how are we conditioned, and how can we have more tolerance for others, but also not go too extreme? I mean, like the Zapatistas in Mexico, they had this leader called Subcommander Marcos, and he helped them sort of get their rights back from the Mexican government. He was a total revolutionary. But what he said is, beware of the neo left, and that what he just meant was people disguising, like Bill Clinton, for example. I talk about Bill Clinton and Bush being lousy liars, because Bill Clinton came up with NAFTA, and that was to basically steal from the indigenous populations who were doing all of our orange picking and raising our cattle for hamburgers, and they got marginalized big time. So he spoke for them,
Yeah, that's interesting. What advice would you give to people that haven't done psychedelics yet, but they might want to try iboga or ayahuasca or maybe even mushrooms or anything kind of like that?
Well, I think it's good that people are microdosing now. Like I said, we used to macrodose all the time. Like talk about McKenna's like heroic dose or whatever. Like it wasn't very smart, because it becomes just like swigging a fifth of whiskey or something. And but microdosing is important, and also set and setting. Like speaking of tradition, like Ram Dass and Timothy Leary, they said that set and setting, right? Where are you at, and who are you doing it with? As opposed to like, I think I'll see a laser light show in the middle of downtown next to all these crazy homeless people. Like, and there's nothing spiritual about it. Might be neat, but like, maybe you could sit with your friends and have an intentional experience. Or if you're going to do ayahuasca, certainly sit with someone who understands the medicine beyond their own personal needs, or for fame or ego stroking, like. And I wish I would have sat with a Peruvian shaman, and if my nerves could handle it, I would do that. I think I think that's really cool that you do it from the source.
Yeah, because you actually you even sort of warn against not just sort of, let's say, somebody in LA with their own little, circle or something, but even I guess people are taking advantage of it in Central America and Mexico and other places as well, right? Gurus popping up everywhere.
Yeah, like I was talking about in the book, the guy with the Adidas sweatsuit and the stack of $100 bills, or whatever, and I'm like, hey, well, I want a spiritual experience, and he's like, I don't have time for you, like, and he's like, reminds me of the weed dealers I grew up with, So, but I just thought it was funny. I was like, how is this authentic? How is this spiritual? But you got to feed your family, so they just see an opportunity. It's like anything else,
The thing I noticed in this book that I was reading as well, about they got the ruling, they got the, I can't really articulate this, but they came back after I can't remember if it was the Spanish conqueror, what's his name again, or if it was the British when they conquered. But they talked about the ruling like as if they were kings, right? But they didn't realize that they were actually just like voted for, and they were like temporary chiefs that were voted for, kind of like it was a completely different hierarchy system. And I don't remember if this was like the Maya or the Aztecs or what culture it was, but they just completely got what was going on there wrong, almost because so then they could go in and say, well, this is a kingdom and this is a tyrant and this is like, we got to take over this guy. Because if they said, well, it's a leadership of the people and they all vote for it. If they don't like it, then they can get rid of the guy right away. Like, I guess they might have been willfully blind to it. But I guess, do I have a question in there? I mean, I guess just any comments on that. And then what would, some of those parts of ancient culture would you really appreciate?
Well, it was different in different places. Like if they're, I think further North American with the like Indians, right? Those indigenous people, that was more of a like sort of, it was less of a king thing. But when you get towards Central America and South America, and it just depends on the time period too, but you have a lot of kings who were ultimately if they didn't perform, the people got upset. So, I mean, it's like the weather is bad, the corn's bad, and now it's your fault. And that's why they become disillusioned. But that's all I can really speak to about that is that I guess they were there for a reason, mostly to just, they were installed either by rulers from another, let's say, site or pyramid far away that had more power. And they were like vassals to this society. So they're either like that or a lot of times like in Palenque, you would have like here, that's actually the coronation right here. You can kind of see that's how they go down. That's the mom of Pakal, the guy who was on the sarcophagus with the cross that's on Ancient Aliens. So he was being coronated at a young age, and it's sort of like get who you can get in power when you can prove their legitimacy. So, and if you can connect them to some cosmological force from thousands of years ago, then that's an even better position, I guess.
Did you get the sense that their sacrifices and their rituals worked at all?
No, they don't work. And one example is the ATM cave in Belize that I talk about. It's like we went back in there, and it's like they have this ruler Chalk, the rain god, right? And they were experiencing drought and famine, and they're like, "What do we do? Well, let's go to the priests; they'll fix it." And the priests go, "Oh, let's kill a bunch of people and sacrifice to Chalk." And way back in the caves, so I remember being there and seeing like hundreds of kids like finger and toe bones and femurs and cracked in skulls and all this, and way back in these caves, and it didn't. And if you go to the geological record or the record of the weather, it was a famine and a drought, and it didn't change. That's why they left, So yeah, it didn't really matter. Like if the rituals didn't matter, it's like you can stick all the stingray spines through a penis and drip it on some woman's tongue. That's what they did. So it's like, and then like put a rope through her tongue, and then what are they? It doesn't really matter. No.
Yeah, no, I just wondered if they were more in tune with the, nature. So, because I feel like some of the ancient cultures were more in tune with what was going on with the weather and maybe even had some sort of control over it. But maybe they just got so big and out of control that, they got corrupted just like we are now.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I've with groups of people, you can change the weather with your mind, small things. Or if you like, I've done yoga before and been like standing in tree pose and took a deep breath and said, "Oh, let's imagine the wind blowing." All of a sudden, the wind picks up. I mean, it's when you're close to the root of the earth or close to the mother nature. But when you're sitting on top of a pyramid and you're in an elite situation and you're doing rituals to prove things or to try and change the outcomes because you're selfish, that's a whole different story. And I think the intention at the beginning was cool, but once the civilizations get too big, that's when the magic stops happening.
That's what I was thinking exactly. And I did want to kind of mention at the end of the book, I think you say, well, we're not sacrificing, people anymore. And then I was like, well, I don't know. I was reading this George Bernard Shaw book from the mid 1940s. And he's a communist and a socialist. But he's got some really interesting takes on scientism and the medical malpractice. And he was making a correlation to like we're still sacrificing animals, humans, just at the altar of science or the altar of this medical thing. And he was proving like all this bunk science that these people were using to actually just like sacrifice dogs over and over or sacrifice humans. I mean, and I started thinking about it, like maybe he's onto something. I mean, maybe we're not even consciously doing it. Maybe we're just changed our gods. You know, now it's for science or for medicine instead of the old deities.
Yeah, I mean, I think
It'll be
said,
algorithms.
like,
That's what'll be next. It'll be
What's that?
algorithms. Next, it'll be algorithms.
that's what I mean. Is like I agree with you, Darren. It's like that. I think in the book I say we're not sacrificing that anymore, but we're sacrificing our children to the algorithm or something like that. I forget. But you know, you're right. It's like what's most important to the algorithm or the hashtag or the consensus.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, and science changes anyway, you know. All of a sudden they'll disprove something and they were completely wrong, but they held so tight to it, right? And then how many people or animals were sacrificed for this stupid idea?
Yeah, and you mentioned in there too, I couldn't believe it. I didn't think anybody else really picked up on the ISIS thing, but you know, you mentioned ISIS and the swastika, how they've co-opted symbols that were important religious symbols or names for evil.
Yeah, because well, energy is tangible, like everything has energy, right? And crystals, like if you know, like if you have a crystal and like think about this crystal, how long it's been around and what it's seen and when it was created, what it saw, like what it took to make this crystal. And sort of so the momentum and the energy of a tangible device or thing used time over time again is powerful. And so if you're using a thing that's tens of thousands of years old, that's been used by other cultures for energy, like the swastika was essentially a cardinal direction and a compass and it was used for you know, for these different elements, right? In the center of the element is ether. And so ether is time, past, present, and potential future. That's like time travel. So you're essentially using the elements and time traveling through all this. Every time the symbol's been used, you're using the force of that. So that's why Hitler had so much power behind his momentum. He knew
that's interesting. Yeah. So it's not about changing it. It's about utilizing the previous power in a way, or the potential that it has.
Like chi, like water, you know, like Bruce Lee.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So it's in the new one. Can you use like the Starbucks logo or the golden arches? And
yeah, like
actually, I was reading something today that said the McDonald's might be in trouble. So
what happened?
Oh, I think they're just fucked. Nobody likes your stuff anymore. They're not selling any stuff.
It's not very good. It's not all.
I don't know, man. I think they're lined up all like crazy in Canada still.
I don't know. They were getting ready to lay off a whack of people.
Wow.
So what are you reading now? What's your what's your go-to for? Are you a fiction guy, nonfiction? Are you gonna write anymore?
I'm reading Razor's Edge. That's the one. I don't know if you saw that movie with Bill Murray when he goes to Tibet and he changes his life. And but it's a book. I'm halfway through. Iron John. It's a book about men. It sort of talks about initiation and how there's no initiation in culture anymore. And so I feel that to be really important. I like to talk.
Yeah. Let's dig into that a little bit because we've talked about that multiple times, and I've even had people emailing saying, "What do you suggest?" Like for my son who's going, you know, he's maybe 13 and they don't know what to do with kids anymore.
Yeah, I mean, this sort of says like bring out the wild man, like the hairy wild beast that's untamed, because it sort of talks about how women, some teenagers, they get to a certain point and they despise their mom because they're controlling, and if the teenager still doesn't do anything about it and he's not initiated, then he's sort of not that it's bad to be raised by your mom, but he sort of says that once you when you're at that sort of coming of age point, if you're not initiated into manhood in a capacity that's wild and free and close to nature, you sort of um, become not spineless, but you become like indecisive, and you become unsure of your step, and you feel lost.
Wow. So can you expand on that a little bit with your view on masculine, like what a positive masculine trait would be, or what positive masculinity looks like?
Yeah, I mean, what I feel like, whether you're gay or straight or whatever your orientation is, it doesn't really matter. I feel that ultimately it's like, how do you make decisions, like I was saying, that's best for the group, and how are you making decisions that are good for you as well without being a pushover? Like healthy no's, like women learning today to say no to men, that kind of same thing goes. And I think healthy relationship to the masculine is being grounded in your convictions and doing what's best for everyone. But if you're talking about healthy feminine aspects within yourself, it's like working with the power of water. Like a river is powerful. Like when you go down the river in a canoe and you're following that pathway, you're really zenned out in this sort of direct way, and you're going with what is, but not like it is what it is. Oh well, like it's more like
You're
this is
going with the flow. Yeah.
yeah, going with the flow, harnessing the energy of electricity, which is powerful. And that's like, once if you unlock that within yourself, or within, even with relating to a woman as a man, that's unstoppable.
What about if you don't agree with what's good for the group, or like at what point does that come in? At what point, when do we turn on the group, or when is it time? When is mob rule not always the best idea? And on what time? Because sometimes groups make decisions based on short-term circumstances, and they're not really thinking about the long-term circumstances.
Or what if they're making decisions based on misinformation or something?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I mean, you could start with a talking stick. I like that, like the Native Americans. Yeah, each person gets a stick, and you talk, and everyone. I mean, I guess if once you vote, and you make a mistake, and then you. I mean, you've seen that show Lost, right? Do you remember that?
I didn't watch it.
Is that the plane crash?
Yeah,
I
I
made
think
it to
so.
like season 6, and then it was like
Yeah, there
fucking
you go.
going off the rails.
Yeah, but I mean, you never knew who to trust, and then all this. I I can't speak to say that I would have all the answers if I was in a group, but I think you would maybe have some basic principles, like not don't harm other people, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it seems like like letting people do, like, just what's that maxim that just let people be as long as they're not harming others, that kind of thing. Like, it's just do unto others what you do with yourself, or whatever. I mean, it just seems like that should be, it's just gone. Like, that whole thing is just, now people just want to force people to do other things. Like, what happened to just leave people be as long as they're not harming people?
Well, I think that brings about the sort of greater cycles of time. It's like, and how the indigenous explain it is like, you have equinoxes on a small scale, and then a large scale, like 1,125 years. The Maya talk about it, and that's that in that time period. That's a whole masculine cycle, and then the next 5,125 years is a feminine cycle. So in the 0 point 2012, that was the center. Okay. And then it starts to spiral out in the other direction. So you have it from masculine, where we were, to feminine. And then it's like out of balance for a while, and then it comes back into balance. And so it's just cycles of time and energy, and you can't ever really control it.
Yeah, that's interesting too.
We just
That
put
fits into. Go ahead.
like the Kali Yuga, or whatever the Hindu
Yeah,
people talk
the
about.
great year.
Yeah.
I mean, that fits into Malcolm Bendall's work too. I mean, he's got the cycles of time in those equations as well. It's interesting. So
And
do you had what's that?
I was just all these books that you have I've never read, and I'm like, I got to read all these books.
Well, no, this is more of like a set of lectures. I'll send them. I'll get your email and I'll send them to you.
Okay.
They just came out recently. It's just interesting. So you also talk about a couple of synchronicities. We always talk about synchronicities on the show, and you mentioned them in your book. Do you want to talk about them offhand at all? Or?
The ones in the book are just synchronicities in general.
Either one, whatever. Any specific ones that have happened to you, maybe? Or?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. I mean, I kind of I remember. Yeah, it's like one thing to the next. It's like you sort of like you're walking down the street and you meet someone, and then you were just thinking, man, I really want to go to Peru, and then they say to you like, oh, I just went to Peru. That's cool. Oh, where'd you go? The Sacred Valley. That's where I was going to go. Just those little things. And then people, it's a coincidence. Like, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in synchronicity. And that's how I followed each teacher, and how I really got into this whole thing was one thing led me to the next, and I followed the synchronicity in my life. I noticed when things were out of place. And once I really started getting into dream work, and doing lucid dreaming and Tibetan dream yoga, that's when I noticed the difference in synchronicity that was really powerful.
What's the difference between Tibetan dream yoga and lucid dreaming?
Well, lucid dreaming, one of my teachers, Stephen LeBerge, he proved.
I know, we know Stephen. I think we had him on the show a long time ago.
Really? Yeah. He's great.
Oh no, we didn't. We didn't. That was the book I read, but we had the other guy on. There's another guy that wrote a famous book, but I started with LeBerge's book too.
Yeah, and I have it right here actually. But the guy's wacky. He's a scientist, but he makes it fun. And I went to a couple of his conferences and his retreats.
Yeah.
And lucid dreaming is just knowing that you're dreaming while you're dreaming. That's it. That's what lucid dreaming is. I mean, there's techniques to get to there, but by definition, that's all that it is. But I like Tibetan dream yoga is doing something about it. So there's more of a sort of a dharma or a purpose there. You're like going into, okay, how can I change my personal life? How can I change the outcome of my waking life through the dream time? And they go into these practices like, turning yourself into mist to go under a door, to go, you have a reoccurring dream, you're trapped inside this room and there's a door, it's locked, you can't get through. Turn yourself into mist, go under the cracks and free yourself, that kind of thing. And it's just on micro and macro scale of all the options you could be doing. It becomes to where, like one time I had, these bikers were attacking me in a laundromat, right, in my dream. And so I was like, oh my God, I must be dreaming. When do I get attacked by bikers in a laundromat? So I was like, I just got to get away from them. So I turned completely small into like that big, and I shoved myself through the glass window. I went through and I flew up, and I went into SpongeBob SquarePants'. He was drinking. He was drinking a drink by a pool, right? So I end up going through the straw or into the drink, and he sucks me up, and then I go into his stomach, and I feel myself in the acid, and then I wake up. But the deal was it was crazy, right? But the deal was I did something. I was conscious enough to change the dream to begin to make it more positive, because I used to have reoccurring nightmares and all this, and I don't have nightmares even when like ninjas are attacking me with submachine guns. Like it's just all
it's not scary anymore. It's more of an adventure or something. Yeah,
and because there's an outcome, there's a reason for it.
So you fixed that through the Tibetan dream work?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the deal is like, where are your insecurities? Where are your fears? Like the shadow self, like Jung talks about, like, unconscious self, and you're unconsciously, like, maybe you're treating women as sex objects, or you're you have all these, you got a basement full of weird toys and there's you're just sort of like a person who has issues around your life and you want to change them, you're finding ways to fill up your life with, Big Mac or whatever, all these things that stop you from being closer to yourself and your conscious self. You can change that in the dream time, and there's no restrictions based on, all the things that are in the waking life. So for me, it was about my interactions with women, and it was also about I don't need to be the same person that they all want me to be anymore. I can do whatever I want. Like, anything's possible. That was a real transition for me. Once I realized in the dream that, well, I can do anything I want. That's when I became an author. That's when I started traveling more and learning about myself and other cultures.
Yeah. Did you ever practice any healing or anything through the Tibetan dream work? Or is that a component of that work? Like, can you heal others in that realm?
Yeah, I mean, I became a Reiki master. I did that. I did all sorts of stuff. It's not something I do. I don't have it on my website or anything like that. But
no, but I mean, just like philosophically or not you specifically, but in general, like, is that a component of that work?
Yeah, I mean, they talk about the chakras, but they talk about the sort of vocals. There's exercises that you can do. And about the dakinis and the healing energy of the dakinis. But it's psychological. Like they say, it's one dream could be better than 3 years of psychotherapy is kind of where they get into.
Yeah. Is there anything you think we need to cover that we didn't cover yet of the book?
Just that I feel that of all the people in the world and all the different ideas, that tolerance is key. That there's so many ideas and options in this world other than what you've always known, and the self-discovery is probably the way that would go much further than any self-help book or any sort of panacea for something. Like, your own path is more important than whatever someone else has laid out for you.
Right.
Well, where's the best place for listeners to get the book? What's the website? If you could spell that out for us, for people that are too lazy to check the notes. And if you could get any social media where people can go and, follow you around on that.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. It's elicoberly.com is my website. And the book, War in the Hearts of Men, is available on Amazon and Instagram, Eli Coberly.
That's ELICOBERLY.
Correct. Yep.
Right on. Thanks, Eli. This has been great. I can't wait till the next book comes out. Are you going to do an audiobook?
There's an audiobook.
There is an audiobook?
Yep.
Did you narrate it yourself?
No, I have a guy from Reno actually that did it. He's a good guy.
I wondered if he actually had his mind changed by your book at all.
I hope so. I hope I influenced him.
I was thinking that because it's pretty deep. It gets into some cool ancient mysteries and stuff. And I was like, I wonder if this guy is going to get interested in all these ancient mysteries now after reading it.
Yeah, it could be. He definitely was like, did I pronounce this right? That was a lot of work getting the Maya language right.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Quetzalcoatl and all those crazy old.
If you ever need another guy that has trouble pronouncing old names, I know just the fella.
Yeah, anyway, thanks. This was fun.
Eli, big thanks for coming on the show. If you could just hang out in the waiting room for a second or two, it'll tell you when you're done uploading. Other than that, it's been a fantastic chat. We hope you have fun and come back anytime.
Love to. Thanks.
And that was a chat with Eli Coberly. What'd you think, buddy?
Yeah, that was fun.
What did you listen to the audiobook then?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, the guy, it was good. It was a good narrator. It was a good book. Yeah.
Did he do anything?
I could just sense that he wasn't necessarily deep into the topic like Eli was, or like we are. That's all.
You could tell that came across.
Yeah. No, not just. I read books all day long, so I can tell. It's just,
I have a bunch of Audible credits right now, so
be
sure to check that out. Yeah, I think I have 3 or 4. So
Yeah, it was a fun book.
Then I have that. We still thought we should talk about that other audible. Anyway, big thanks to Eli for coming on the show. Check out his stuff. Buy his book. Let us know what you think. Buy our books, adultbrain.ca. Buy my book at canadianshame.ca. I think it's CA. Might be called. Must be CA.
Let's see it, yeah.
Anyway, head over to grimerica.ca for everything we're up to, because we can't continue to have these conversations with great guys like Eli and doing what we're doing without the support of fellows and ladies like you. grimerica.ca/support. If you can, when you can, guys, sign up for a monthly. Check out adultbrain.ca for the audiobooks. We have that event coming up. It might not be too late to come to Utah last minute, 4/20 to 24 April. We're going to party down in Utah, see some stars, have a blast. There's like 6 spots left. Unless you want to camp. There's a bunch of camping, but it looks like there's going to be like 4 feet of snow, so it might not be the best camping. But if you like want to build
igloos and stuff.
Yeah, you could build a snowfort igloo. There we go. We'll do a podcast from igloo while we're down there, like the old days. I think that's about it. Support us if you like us, so we don't go away. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Just a drop in the bucket, baby. You're just a single solitary drop in the bucket, baby. You're just a drop in the bucket, baby. You're just a single solitary drop in the bucket, baby. Baby. Headlines they read, doom and gloom, and I drop down on my bended knee and howl at the moon, oh, and I drop down on my bended knee, pinching pennies. To be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best of friend. Oof. I think I'll be a poet today. Sketch out the scenery, rambling from here and there and back and forth between here and there and back and forth between here and there and to the corner store. The Sunrise Corner Store. The Sunrise Corner Store. The Sunrise Corner Store. Pinching pennies, la da da da. Whoa, whoa. Ta-da. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. to be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to be my best of friend. There's $1 million house up for sale back in my hometown. Think I'll buy it up with my good charm. Buy myself a dog to